Welcome to Talkin' Waukesha, the podcast where every conversation springs to life.
I'm Andrew Nofke.
And I'm Anthony Terrell.
And we're your hosts for today's journey into the heart of Waukesha.
Whether you're a local or just passing through, join us as we explore the stories, people, and hidden gems that make Waukesha truly special.
From community events to personal anecdotes, we're here to bring you the pulse of our vibrant town.
So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into another episode of Talkin' Waukesha,
where every conversation springs to life. All right, welcome back to another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We're here with Damien, the Director of Public Works, and Brandon Schwenn, the Deputy Director and City Engineer for Public Works. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
So we'll start off with a pretty easy question for you, and it might get a little harder as we go along. But can you give us a brief overview of what the Department of Public Works is responsible for in Waukesha? I mean, road mileage, sewer footage, stuff like that. You know, whatever you can give us.
Whatever I can give you. So that's could be a question that you keep going and going.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So to start off with, the Department of Public Works has 7 divisions, including the Streets Division, the Clean Water Plant, Engineering, Transit, Parking, GIS, and Solid Waste. So we cover all sorts
Everything,
of things.
Yeah.
So yes, so our road miles, we figured we have about 250 and a similar length of sewer miles as well. So there's plenty of roads out there to maintain, and storm sewers and sanitary sewers as well. Stormwater ponds, did you look that up, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a firm number, but we're over 100, you know, in that general.
And is that just the city-owned ponds then, or is those including the resident-owned or HOA-owned?
When you count those, there's probably quite a bit more than that as well. So that adds up fairly quickly then.
Yeah.
So our main reason for public works, obviously, is to maintain the city's infrastructure, the sewers, the roads, and all of that stuff. We also, at the plant, we treat all the city's wastewater before it goes into the rivers, and snow and ice control, transit, obviously.
So pretty much anything but a tree to a certain degree, but even there's some trees that you kind of help maintain.
We do maintain some trees and stormwater ditches and ponds and things like that. So
yeah, pretty much anything Waukesha, basically, you have some involvement in.
Yep, like I said, we cover wide swaths and get into basically every person's. We touch just about every person around the city at some point.
Definitely.
Yeah. So how do you prioritize projects and allocate resources across different areas like road maintenance, storm, water, and sewers?
Yeah, so I mean, we could probably go through about a 45-minute, hour-long presentation on how we prioritize all of our items, and you know, we've maybe done a presentation or two to council to that effect. But what it really boils down to is it comes down to what's our budget. You know, what budget are we going to be allocated? What needs do we have around the city? And looking at what backlogs do we have? Obviously, we're not 100% caught up with all of our infrastructure needs. We have a wide range of items that really need to be addressed across all of these different facets. And, you know, it's just kind of a balance of where you put that allocated money, try and balance it out and make sure that we are doing projects of all the various different needs within public works. But we also have to consider, you know, where infrastructure items overlap, right? If we have a sanitary sewer that needs to be replaced, well, we can't get to that without going through the roadway. So now that accelerates a roadway project that maybe isn't the highest priority, but the sewer is the highest priority. So we have to move up that roadway project to correspond with the sewer. So it's finding the balance of where our needs are and then across the different elements within public works to working with not only our internal utilities, but coordinating with the water utility as well and finding their projects and how it impacts our infrastructure needs.
So are most sewer and stormwater and water infrastructure things, are those underneath roads by design?
They're primarily, you know, they pick most of the right of way is all not all pavement, but a good percentage of the right of way is pavement, and that's where our public utilities are, or even the private utilities as well when they need upgrade and replacement. That, you know, the street is usually impacted, and putting it under the street is usually the best place for it, because in the terrace area you might have trees that may impact utilities or other obstacles and that aren't there.
So no obstructions, no issues. So it's easy. You don't have to. I mean, you want to contact the residents, obviously, if they're impacted in any way, but it's not tearing up their front lawn to
Correct.
fix something, if possible.
We try to keep the work in the
right of way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What are the biggest public works challenges that Waukesha is facing right now?
I guess it goes back to what Brandon was kind of saying, and that's handling the backlog of the projects. With the construction costs increasing continuously,
Right.
Everybody's feeling the inflation in that, and that's no different in construction materials and contractor work and things like that. So, and then how to manage that with a tightening budget. There's so much streets, so much sewer, so much storm sewer that needs to be repaired or maintained, but ever increasing tighter budgets and things like that. So,
Right.
And so while winter is nearly over, can you explain Waukesha's approach to snow removal and how residents can best assist in making it more efficient?
Sure. I guess what we'd say is that every snowstorm is different, and dependent on the timing, dependent on if it starts with rain, turns to ice, turns into snow. Every snowstorm is different, and we look at it and try to do the best we can possible for that event. But generally speaking, the goal is always to cover or hit the roads that are the highest priority first, meaning hospital routes, right? So that fire and ambulances and emergency services can get to and from hospitals. And then our arterial streets and where transit runs. Once we're kind of through with those higher priorities, then we move into residential streets and moving finally off to like cul-de-sacs and alleys, which are on the lowest end of the priority list.
So what's the ideal winter storm then? Is it just something that, leaves the dusting and keeps it on the grass?
Probably anything that starts late enough that we can get through it, and it finishes early enough that we can get through it before rush hour starts.
Yeah. I suppose fewer cars, fewer obstructions in the way. It makes it easier.
100%. If we can call everybody in at 3:00 in the morning when that snow starts, at midnight or something, or right around 3, and be done by 6 a.m. and have the streets just wet in the morning, that's the optimal snowstorm. But it rarely happens. This year we had several early in the season that started right in the middle of rush hour in the morning, and everybody knows how that goes.
Yeah,
so.
those have been delightful.
I feel like the season has been almost kind of the ideal because we haven't had too much snow, at least that's really stuck and stayed.
Just one snowstorm, one ice storm, and
Like it felt like that was it.
Well,
knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so far, yeah.
Yeah, so far, it's
Seeing that was
Wisconsin.
70 on Sunday, so it'll be -12 tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say we're not necessarily over yet.
No.
But we did have 15 or 16 events that we called staff in or had to address. Not all of them were the biggest ones, but they all had to be.
Any
dealt
amount of
with,
snow,
so,
you need something.
Yeah, so 15 or 16, and we usually average between 20 and 25, so slightly below average.
and last year was a down year. I think we were in the 10 or 11 range. So it was definitely, we're trending even a little higher than last year. So the last couple of years, I think we've been
pretty fortunate.
Pretty fortunate. Now we had the big snowstorm last year. But outside of that, it was definitely a down year. I think, just like Alex said, every event is different. So every year is different, and just being prepared for whatever we get thrown at.
Yeah.
Is it frustrating when it snows real heavy one day and then it all just melts the next day then? Because it's like, oh, wow, that was for nothing.
We just worked really hard to get
Yeah.
that snow, and then it just melted
Yeah.
anyways. Yeah, no,
That's what it felt like for when we did the memorial event at Grady Park, where it was all covered in snow, and then we had people from Public Works coming to help shovel it, and then the next day it was all just melted.
it's all gone. Just enough to make it really difficult the day of the event.
The mild inconvenience.
Yeah.
Messy and not.
And it couldn't choose whether it wanted to rain or snow. It was just cold and wet. But
Yes.
Still ended up being a good event.
No, that's how Wisconsin weather is in the winter.
Yeah, that's true.
So just to follow up on your second part of your question about what residents can do, not parking there's cars on the street overnight or during snow events, I guess is our
as best as possible. Because
Yes.
obviously there's
if possible,
Yeah.
that's what we'd ask, is to keep parked cars in driveways and things like that, and also giving the plows plenty of space. So.
Sure. And then if there's not really anywhere for residents to park their cars, then should they just be aware of like making sure they're parking it on the right sides, or would you suggest them parking it like at the structures we have or something like that, maybe?
If that's a possibility,
Sure,
for sure.
of course.
There's plenty of spots in the 2 parking ramps.
Yep,
Or other
between
public parking lots.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we're closer to spring than winter, let's talk about everyone's favorite orange flower, the traffic cone. About how many projects does the city have planned for this year, and when can we start seeing some of these projects popping up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've already had some projects already start to kick off. Some leftover projects from 2024 work, some projects that actually didn't even stop that worked mildly through the winter. But we got a couple big projects kicking off between this week and next week as well. But in total, we're looking capital projects citywide. We got about 35 of them planned for this year. But now those aren't all streets.
Right, yeah.
So they're a wide swath. We have building and facility projects, park projects. But what it comes down to is we have about 14, 15 roadway projects. So that's when we start seeing our orange barrels, orange cones that are impacting the traveling public. So in 2025, we do have some sizable projects. It's not maybe our biggest year for capital improvement projects, but we do have a healthy dose of them that will be somewhat impactful to the traveling public, but they're important projects, and some of them that have been pushed off a couple of years that we're finally getting to, like the Silver Nail Road utility and reconstruction project up there on the north side of the city. That'll be kicking off next week. This week, we are also starting the Hartwell and Broadway traffic signal replacement project. So that's a couple of big ticket item ones that are getting going here in March. Obviously, we try and start them as soon as possible. Just to be, complete within the year or done as soon as possible when the weather is conducive. The weather has definitely been on our side thus far.
So far, so good.
We'll see how that goes. But that's what we're looking at from a capital perspective for 2025.
And of course, there's other projects that the county is doing that are around town as well that may not be directly impacting. I know Les Paul Parkway, that one's got a decently sizable one as well, a couple traffic signals there.
Yeah,
the East Bypass.
Yeah, the DOT's East Bypass project, that will be, it is not a city project, but it goes right through the city jurisdiction.
It's a chunky one. I'll drive through that one.
Yeah, it's going to impact a lot of people.
A lot of traffic will be rerouted.
Yeah, it will be tough now that is planned for a 2-year project from what we understand for the DOT. So definitely be aware of that and check out the DOT's website for updates. And, we'll try and have the best information as possible, but it is WISDOT running that project.
Yeah, but for projects that are happening in the city, by the city, where's the best place that people can get information if they want updates on what's kind of going on?
I guess we send out weekly updates to residents that are directly affected to the project. We gather emails and we send out a weekly email for those updates for specific to those projects, and anybody can get assigned or lined up for those project updates. But all those are also posted on the city's website every week. So we just recommend that everybody goes to the city's website and keep up to date. And if you want to sign up for the emails, we can get you on the list.
Perfect.
Yeah, there's a nice button in the upper right of all the project web pages that says "Sign me up for updates," and that sends an email directly to our the city's assigned project manager, and we'll add you right to the update list. So that's the quickest way to get the latest and greatest information right to your inbox.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, and those will be really specific down to what activity is happening for that week, what's been completed, what's happening now, and what's anticipated.
So obviously I pitched that one because I'm updating the website, but reading through those each week, it's fantastic to know, like, okay, this road will be impacted a little bit. This project is starting. I mean, it gets you past having to drive by that location to know something's happening. Yeah. It kind of gives you a good insight of like, oh, should I drive, can I drive through that area without impacting my commute? Or, should I kind of avoid the area if possible?
Yeah, that's the one thing we really make sure to point out is the traffic impacts, and then the changes to the traffic routing.
Yeah, traffic and bus impacts really are the key ones.
Yep.
Of those projects that are happening this year, do you two have ones that you're excited for or about, or it's like you're excited to see that it's finally being changed, or it's finally happening, or that we're moving forward with it?
I think for me, the Silvernail Road reconstruction has been shuffled around in the budget a few different times, and we did finally get it in there for 25 to move ahead. We're back in, it's another major street within the city, so it's nice to be able to dive into that and address a need up there. That pavement definitely needs it, and a couple other improvements that we're doing. As far as me personally, I'm definitely excited for the Broadway and Hartwell intersection.
Yeah.
That traffic signal definitely needs to be replaced, and we have geometric changes to the intersection that really should help some of the challenges that some drivers face traveling through there.
It is a confusing little area sometimes.
I always see people stopping right in the middle of that intersection, and I see the sign right next to it, like, look at the sign, it says don't stop.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice.
So that will be a big one. That should be a pretty quick project that comes together in and out to replace that traffic signal and do those geometric changes. But it will be a big impact, and I think once everybody sees the improvements and gets used to it, that they'll be happy with the direction that we're going.
Definitely.
Yeah, for me, it'd probably be the flood mitigation project. I think there's 2 phases that are actually going to be going through this summer's construction season. It's kind of the finishing touches on the Area 7 flood mitigation, right, Brandon? We started on the north end of it with some improvements along Summit and north of there, and then south of North High School as well along Michigan and to the ditch where that outfalls. But now it's kind of the middle part through North High School, basically. So there's a lot of impact there to the school and the area there, but it'll be the nice finishing touch on that project.
Yeah, and is that for more just stormwater flood mitigation kind of thing? So if it's just every heavy rains, heavy snow melt, stuff like that.
Yep. There's quite a bit of flooding up along the Grandview, north of Summit area that this is all kind of handling and bringing through the low area there. So
very nice. So a little more fun. So if you had unlimited time and unlimited funding to fix any issues in Waukesha, public works related, obviously, what would it be and why?
Well, I'm not sure if it's totally feasible, but I'd love to eliminate as many train crossings as possible in the city.
Now, do you want the trains going under the streets or over the streets?
Well, if we had as much as possible, if we could reroute them around Waukesha, that would be number one. But that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, over or underneath the heavier traveled roads, especially Moreland Boulevard would be probably the top of my list to see.
The one over by Frame Park?
Yeah, to have the at-grade crossing removed and have a bridge put in there of some sort.
Yeah.
That would be number one, but that'd be an extremely expensive project and may even not be feasible. But
yeah, it'd have to be either a really tall bridge or someone's going underwater.
The river is right there.
Yeah. Say that makes it very tricky, yeah. Especially, and you've got the White Rock intersection that's not too far up, so don't have much play space.
It's a lot of constraints.
Yeah.
For sure. But hey, we're talking unlimited funding.
It sounds like a fun challenge.
Yeah, we could make it happen. Yeah. That was
we were kind of on the same page in that one. If we had to change gears from the train crossings, I think unlimited time and funding, it'd be really nice to catch up on our pavement infrastructure. We're definitely behind the 8 ball, especially in our resurfacing program. We have a lengthy backlog with streets that definitely need to be addressed. If we had unlimited funding and time, and it'd be nice to really catch up on that. As far as the pavement goes, I mean, we're both have a road background, and streets are kind of where we live and die and where we came up. So, that'd be my next pick if we couldn't do the train crossing.
Yeah. And even if we did catch up on the backlog, there still would be projects out there to do.
Oh, definitely,
yeah.
You'd start finding projects of, all right, now that everything's perfect, how do we get better?
Yeah.
Is there an ideal type of pavement to have for this city? Is there like one that's a good catch-all, or do you need specific different kinds for different areas?
We bid projects with a concrete and asphalt alternative typically. And it, obviously concrete might be better for our higher traveled roads or if there's heavy traffic on them and that sort of thing. But really we just look at the life costs to see which one is more worthwhile for the city. And we've been getting really good prices on concrete the last, how many years? 10 years now at least.
Yeah, for as long as I've been here, is that the concrete, the slightly higher initial cost for over the life cycle of the pavement definitely pays off just because you need less rehabilitations where resurfacing, that in an asphalt pavement, you have multiple resurfacings that you need to work into your resurfacing program. Well, if we have a lengthy backlog of resurfacing, that makes it very hard to,
makes it deteriorate
to do that.
harder.
Where concrete, we can buy ourselves some time after initial construction before we actually have to do a large scale maintenance project. And that maintenance project is replacing panels and doing spot replacements instead of a full scale resurfacing. So it just kind of buys you a little bit more time with the concrete and with the initial cost just being slightly above the HMA price, it definitely pays off in the long run. So there's maybe not a perfect system or a perfect payment. It's definitely a location-based item, but that's what we've been seeing over the last 10, 15 years is where the concrete is coming in and why a lot of our reconstruction streets have gone to concrete is because of that. But we still have a healthy asphalt, street system out there that we do major resurfacing on an annual basis that is important to that, ecosystem as well.
So going a half step back, you said HMA pricing. What does that mean?
So HMA, hot mix asphalt.
Okay.
So it's a industry term. Sometimes I fall back into the line of
not a problem. Just want to make sure. If I don't know, there's others that know. And then does concrete versus asphalt, does it react better to our more weather extremes? Does with expansion joints and things like that?
It all goes back to how you prepare the base and what sort of ground you have below the road structure. So if we have well-drained soil, that's always going to help increase the longevity of a street that we rebuild. So our streets that we're rebuilding right now, we're making sure that the subgrade is plenty firm and up to the level that it's going to have a street last a long time.
So it's really helpful actually that you have to replace the stormwater systems then because you're going as deep as you need to, making sure everything 8-10 feet down is very good at that point.
That's a true statement. Excavating down 8-10 feet. Usually the trenches are then the best part of the road, and then we have to do something called undercutting where you're removing any other additional clay or anything like that would be holding water or preventing, better drainage under the road structure.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, something else that we do with our concrete pavements is we seal all of our joints. So anybody that's been on a reconstruction project recently, they'll see that we put this black joint sealer on our concrete streets. Well, that may not be visually the best looking item in the world, and we try and the contractors try and do it as clean as possible. But what that does is it prevents water or stops or slows down water infiltration into the joints. And that's what deteriorates our pavement, especially in the harsh conditions that we have in Wisconsin, where you have water entering that base course and subgrade, then it freezes and expands, freeze thaws, and then that constant movement on the pavement is what we see cracking and deterioration at the surface. So if we can stop that water from entering,
do these seals then kind of expand and contract because they're a different material, so they're able to kind of adapt with heat and cold?
It's flexible.
Yeah, it's tar basically.
Okay.
So it can move with that expansion and contraction. We do the same thing with asphalt streets with our annual crack sealing contract and project, but we can't. There's always cracks to seal, always cracks to fill. So that never goes away. But the more water that you can stop going through the surface, the longer lifespan that you get of your pavement. So that's something we're doing on the concrete side, and then monitoring it for asphalt as well, because that's just a standard maintenance and rehabilitation of the asphalt streets.
Interesting.
It's good to know, because I always wondered too, seeing construction, it's like why, when they're basically digging the hole to replace the road, why they're going so deep. Now that makes sense. So.
Yep. Yeah, we live in a climate that's about as bad as you can get for holding up condition of roads, I guess. Yeah. If a road is in a condition where it's frozen all winter, that's a better circumstance than having the freeze thaw.
When you get those mild winters of every other day is a different weather event.
February and March are usually the worst time of the year for roads when it
but
freezes.
On the plus side,
freezes thaws.
Those cones start showing up, and it's going to only get better.
Yeah. So, what is the most unusual or interesting project that you've worked on?
For me, I guess it would have to be the Green Meadow Interceptor Sewer Project. We had this was a rather large project we completed. I'm not sure exactly how many years ago it was, but it eliminated a couple pump stations. One of which handled about a third of the city's sewer flow.
Wow.
Through it. So it was a very important building and set of pumps and things like that. And we replaced that with a gravity sewer line. So an interceptor sewer is basically able to get that sewage from that point where that pump station was all the way to the clean water plant without having an artificial pump to get it back up.
So it's a lot of working with the grade of the pipeline just to make sure that it's flowing in the right direction.
And what was interesting about it is we've never had a project where we had to actually tunnel, right? So we had a tunnel that extremely deep, 75 feet plus, under, through Madison Hill, basically, from Lowell School, that corner there. And so that was the first time we've ever had to tunnel.
Do you have to use like a tunnel bore for that? And then you're actually physically
a machine going through the bedrock. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was a rather extensive project. Jonathan Chapacom was a project engineer on that project, but it was a really special project for the city. We have a much more sustainable operation there for keeping the sewer flowing, right? We don't have to worry about power problems or anything like that.
Right, just going to keep going because it's
just
going
to keep flowing.
Yeah.
And the other part of that project, once you get back into the, more reasonable depths of sewer, we also had to go underneath the river again. Well, there's a siphon structure that we had to construct underneath the Fox River there. So that was a challenge, a construction challenge as well, having that bored underneath the river. So,
because I imagine you have to go certain depths deep where where the river is supported by the land above at that point. And
well, you want to try to get to a point where you're going through something you can control the grade and the for that pipe that's going in. So it was a challenge.
That sounds like an engineering feat. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, there's a low spot in that pipe, but because of how it's constructed, it actually is a siphon, so it'll bring the water back out. So.
Interesting. It's very interesting.
Physics, man.
As about as interesting as a public work project can get. That's fascinating to me.
No, it was a real good one. Yeah, it's worthwhile for sure.
Yeah. So I would say for me, I didn't have anything as maybe overly interesting as that, but our involvements on West Waukesha bypass portion, as well as improvements at Meadowview Park that I was involved with. I think that it was very shortly after I started here with the city, so I kind of really got thrown into the fire on a very large scale project. We had, big storm sewer structures, a diversion structure, so a lot on the stormwater management side of things that went into that bypass project, plus all the coordination with DOT and Waukesha County, and we're reconstructing taking basically a 2-lane road and we're going 4-lane, divided facility. A lot of challenges with maintaining traffic, all the above. And then the improvements in Meadowview Park with the biofiltration basins and how all the stormwater management played into that project. So I think for me, that was probably the most unusual or interesting project that I was involved in, and it was months after I started here with the city. So it was
you're not kidding. Trial by fire there. You got to literally working with every level of government, with almost every facet of DPW there.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean multiple levels of government, multiple departments,
agencies.
Helps you learn really quick, I imagine.
I mean, it was helpful that I did come from WSDOT, so I had a lot of contacts over there that when we were working with the DOT that made it a lot more helpful. But that was just an element to, getting my feet wet here with the city.
Yeah, definitely. So for both of you, what is the project that you're most proud of?
I guess it would probably be maybe not necessarily a project, but the start of a project or projects, which would be like the downtown reconstruction, right? Going through and figuring out what the design was going to look like for the streets, planning out when the projects were going to happen, and then developing those first phases of the project. So getting into how are these, how we're trying to widen the terraces out to have another, a nicer area for businesses downtown, and then, but bringing the businesses in early to look at what we're proposing and then get them on board with the long reconstruction process, right? And letting them know how it's going to go and trying to deal with that the best as possible.
And that was part of a 7-year project, if I remember right? 7, 8 years, something like that?
Yeah, it was a little longer than we had originally anticipated because we skipped a couple years in there.
Had a couple gap years.
Yeah, but it was necessary. So
yeah,
but overall they turned out really fantastic. It revitalized the downtown, I'd say, and that was really the first projects that we had basically starting in the dead of winter. Right, we had projects starting in January. And dealing with frost removal and things like that. So contractors had to bring out heaters to thaw the frost out of the road, and
it's not something you think. Yeah,
obviously that's not ideal for construction, but that's the better time of the year for the downtown and all the businesses. So we had tight deadlines on those projects to get them completed by as early as possible in the summertime. In those projects, that was also the first time that we had considered an incentive payment to the contractor to try to put extra effort or extra crews or whatever it took to get it done early. So we had a completion date, and then we said, well, if you can get it done X amount of days earlier, you get an incentive payment. So,
well, seems like it worked.
I think for the most part, businesses are happy downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, from my perspective, I think it's just piggybacking off of Alex. My project that I'm most proud of is the reconstruction of Barstow Street and Riverfront Street in 2020. Obviously, Alex had already laid the foundation with the downtown businesses. So when I got into the downtown realm, it was a little bit easier to take off from there because of all the legwork and all the projects that we had previously successfully completed. But Barstow Street and Riverfront Street was dollar amount our largest project that we had delivered in the downtown area. And oddly enough, it was done in 2020. So that was its own challenges, presented itself a lot of challenges.
Help with fewer traffic, lesser traffic.
There were some good things.
There were some positives. There were some negatives between, the working through crews not being available or all the complexities with that. But at the end of the day, I think the project was very successful. It was very large scale. We had a lot of different phases and changes to that project that, we wanted to keep access open as much as possible. We were very tactful with when certain intersections were closed, like Barstow Street and Main Street, and broke that project up into multiple different sections, as well as the changes to Riverfront Street. I think were big positives.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gorgeous strip of road, honestly.
Yeah, we took a street that looked very much like an older parking lot, and we've put our downtown streetscaping spin on it, and I think it turned out fantastic. So that's what, at the end of the day, what comes in my mind of my proudest project.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very inviting strip of area, especially Riverfront Street. I mean, I drive in on Barstow every morning, and I mean, it's a great throughway through downtown and to the rest of the town as well. I mean, it's well utilized too, I think.
Yeah, and it's hard to think back of before the project. It was like, it was a 4-lane facility. It was like a highway rolling through there, and now we have 2-lane facilities. We have parking now. We have terrace areas. So it was a big change, and I think that was met with some questions through the design process. But at the end of the day, it definitely works.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm surprised neither of you said the transition of one-way streets to two-way streets. I thought that was going to be one of them.
On St. Paul and North Street?
Yeah. Well, that one, or throughout downtown.
Yeah,
or
any of them.
They still exist.
Yeah.
Not too many.
No.
Not too
Yes.
many, no.
Well, yeah, I think a good amount of them are residential areas, especially around downtown.
The only one I can think of is over by the public library.
Yeah. Cook Street, Maple. No, Maple.
No, Maple is both. It's Carroll.
Yes, that's one. So what's something about the department that most people might not know?
That was a tough one for us to think about here, but I'd have to say that it's probably people don't realize the extent of how far Public Works reaches and it affects their life. Like I said before, we reach just about every person in the city one way or the other, right? You're taking a shower, you're flushing the toilet. Guess what? Public Works is dealing with that. You're taking your trash out. We manage the contract that picks up your garbage. The snow plowing, right? Taking care of and cleaning up the streets after that.
Yeah,
and then
100%.
everything else with the maintenance of the roadways and things like that. So I think that'd be what people don't completely understand about Public Works is how far the reach is, I guess.
Roughly how many staff do you guys have within the department through all the divisions?
All through all divisions. I think we were just over 100, right?
Yeah, that was what
Right
was in
around
my
there.
mind.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, there's tons of staff and all of them are friendly. Be nice to them, please.
Yeah, like at the clean water plant, there's over 20 people there, just keeping that plant running 24/7, right? That never stops
stop.
working. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always someone there. I mean,
Yeah. And then the other big thing at the streets division, right? We've got 50 some people there, and that group also deals with all the fleet and manages the repair and maintenance of our fleet, the city's fleet.
yeah, it's always interesting when you're there. It's like, oh, okay, you got all the plows lined up or all the dump trucks lined up, and then there's just an ambulance here getting an oil change or a fire truck that needs something adjusted to it.
Yeah, that was something I didn't know, which I was really surprised, but like fun to see. Because we did a day in the life video for one of the engineers who works on the vehicles, and he had the fire truck lifted up, and it's just incredible to see a fire truck lifted 10 feet above you, and that it's even possible. But then also that we do that, and that we have people here that are able to just fix those such important vehicles.
We have a very skilled group of mechanics down
Yes.
there.
100%. Yeah.
They've done anything from, oil changes to working on replacing engines. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure we've got some openings. So if there's any mechanics out there who are interested, go to the website, waukesha-wi.gov/jobs, and there's some opportunities out there.
So what other job than your current job would you love to try?
in Public Works related field or any dream job.
The world is your oyster.
Oyster. Well, for me, it would have to be a professional golfer. I'm not good at golf, but I like golf. I think that would be a great
That would be a pretty great gig.
Yes.
Oh, no, I get to do this leisure activity and get paid for it?
Yeah, a leisure activity and always good weather. Not always good weather, but you're golfing in beautiful locations.
Right.
And things like that.
Yeah, I think, along the same vein, everybody wants to be a pro athlete, right? But I think that being a professional race car driver would be probably towards the top of my list.
Any type of car?
Well, I've always been a big NASCAR fan,
Okay.
so probably in that realm of stock car racing, that would be that's kind of what I'm into in my hobbies and my free time. So I think trying that out professionally would be quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I've just been recently getting into IndyCar, and I just saw, I think it was 2 weeks ago or a couple weeks back, they had, I cannot remember his name, third baseman from the Yankees for a couple of years back, Alex Rodriguez. They had him in the back of a car. He's like, I didn't realize how fast these cars go and how many G's they're pulling. Because they're talking to him, and you can hear that he's, audibly having issues speaking.
Yeah, you just can't do it.
But yeah, I mean, I think that aspect would be fascinating. Would I want to drive it myself? Not necessarily, but it's very
Got to
interesting.
experience it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how does the city decide what projects get done during a year? Obviously, you've got a list of projects. You're prioritizing what's the most important, what facets need to be looked at and addressed right away. But I guess what's the what is it like? Kind of getting down to brass tacks. What's going to come first as a project?
Yeah, looking at the backlog again, right? I mean, we have to have a balance of roads and sewers and storm sewers and things like that kind of fall in line based on the highest priority item, right? But that balance also has to kind of even out and work all together on reducing our backlog in each one of those areas consistently. So I guess the answer is it's balancing the priorities. There's priorities everywhere you look, but what's the highest priority
Right, trying
now.
not to shut down too many throughways, and also
yeah.
making sure that parks projects are getting done, facility projects are getting done. And
Yeah, so it's balancing the priorities.
do you ever find that it's a struggle where if you have too much of one type of project that you lose out on contractors because they've bidded and accepted one project, they don't want to overstretch themselves?
I don't think we've had major problems with contractors.
Not necessarily,
Yeah,
no.
there's a pretty large pool of contractors in southeastern Wisconsin, but obviously you can't do too many road projects, right? And you can't do, I mean, you can do
Things have to get
keep
done.
doing sanitary projects, but then you're doing the road, right? So it's like I said, it's the balance.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through a typical process of how a project goes from CIP to complete?
Yeah, that's a good one. Realistically, what it comes down to is it starts with conception, right? We need to identify, we're looking at our backlogs, looking at our needs. Okay, what's even just the scope of the project? What are we doing? Are we reconstructing the street from this street to that street? How far are we going? We can't just be unlimited. We actually have to have project limits, and that what makes sense with our other infrastructure. So it really starts at conceptual design and scoping of that project. Once we get a decent scope of project, that we need to now put together a cost estimate, and that's what line ends up in the CIP. So all of this work, even just to get a project into the CIP, starts well in advance. We have to say what are we even doing? What streets need to be touched? We have to have a good handle on what our backlog is, what our conditions of our payments or our storm sewer, sanitary sewer, et cetera. So it really starts at that conception type setup and project scoping just to get it even in the CIP.
And when you're doing those estimates, what are you using as like a reference point for, how much does one unit of concrete cost versus something else?
Fantastic question. What we do is we use, historic bid pricing. We look at recent bid pricing across projects, and we may throw out an inquiry to a contractor here and there that says, what are we looking at for 2025 or 2026 from a cost increase perspective? What are you hearing from the industry? Yeah. And then kind of make our determination of, well, we're expecting concrete costs to go up 3%, 5%, 8%. And we build that into our estimate. So we use historic bid pricing with an inflator or an assumed percentage of cost increase going into the next year. So then we can have realistic budgets moving into CIP, because we don't want to under budget a project and then now we're trying to find funds or having to cut scope out of the project. We want to be realistic in our estimates so we understand that from that conceptual standpoint. So once a project's in the CIP, that's a lot of work to get it there, but now the project actually starts. Now we're looking at preliminary engineering work, which includes project survey. So you'll see either internal staff or consultants that we hire out to go and survey these projects, so we can actually start designing them. So the survey work is done. We start preliminary design. Most projects that we do it in-house with our group of engineers. We do try and consult out as little as possible. We do have engineering consultants that we work with when needed or when additional expertise come into play, but we do as much as possible with our own internal staff. And it helps just with project delivery. It helps with keeping costs down for sure. Being internal staff knows, they're very efficient. They know our system and how to deliver projects. So we go through project design, multiple rounds of reviews, whether that's other agency coordination, other departments, internal reviews, et cetera. Then we can go to project bidding. We bid a project. Hopefully we get a good bid and it's within budget estimates. Take it through definitely Board of Public Works, Common Council to bid the project. And then we can move into construction. Now, a big piece of that, obviously, through this whole process is public outreach. So working with you guys on the communication team to make sure that we're getting information to the residents out there of, hey, you got a project coming. What do we need to expect? Here's your contractor. Here's our timeline. Updating the website, all the above is a big element to that. Then we can finally get into construction. So the construction element is while it takes a long time, there's so much work that goes.
It seems like it's almost the smallest part
Yeah,
of it.
it
Once,
really is.
once the shovel's in the ground, a lot of it's pretty good until hiccups kind of and bumps in the road.
Correct.
The proverbial bump in the road shows up.
We obviously provide major oversight of our contractors and our inspection staff, but the amount of work that front loads all these projects is where the bulk of the work for our city staff comes into play. The construction element is an oversight type role in making sure that we're a point of contact for stakeholders, the traveling public, all the above. So that's where it comes into play. Construction happens. We hopefully meet our project deadlines, close the project out, and then restart.
Yeah.
And each year it's not the same, but it's the same process where we're back into CIP, back into project scoping and estimating for the next year. So it just never stops. It's just a big circle.
So are you working on projects now that are going to be happening in 2030? For our CIP is 5 years typically. So capital projects, are you looking that far out, or are you looking a little bit shorter scope because it's hard to tell what's degrading at what rates and what needs to be improved?
While we have a 5-year CIP plan, we have an idea of where we're going to be as far as our streets and other infrastructure are concerned. So we're looking out from a conceptual standpoint for about that 5-year window. But our actual nitty-gritty design work, we're looking at this year's 2025 projects and a little bit of 2026 projects.
So I imagine it's like that 8 to 10 month kind of range roughly, as you want to focus on what's going on now. And once those kind of slow down a little bit, then you pick up for the next year.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, there's some larger projects that we might get into that have multiple years worth of just design. Some of the more complicated projects at the clean water plant, for example, those have maybe had 2 years of just design work ahead of the project construction. So
your ideal of the Moreland train, that's going to take probably multiple years of design work.
So if a resident feels their street or sidewalk needs repair or replacement, what can they do to have it fixed?
So if you're seeing problems on your street, potholes or that sort of thing, the citizen request portal on the city's website, I think, is the easiest and most direct way to get something that's an issue brought to our attention. It could be anything. It could be a mess in the street. It could be a pothole, or it could be a storm sewer that's not draining, all sorts of different things. So that's a direct connection to the group that's going to be managing and getting those items addressed. So as we've been talking here, right, if somebody wants their street replaced, there's a lot that goes into it and a lot of a backlog, and you can't just, I'm calling the city and they're going to replace my street.
Right.
It doesn't work.
You won't necessarily get the pothole filled right away. It may take a little time.
Potholes will get filled within 2 days. We get those taken care of as quickly as we possibly can, but we can't just say, we're going to reconstruct the street if it wasn't in the plan or if it had been thought of, because of all the things that we've just been discussing on how much planning goes into that and coordinating with the utilities and all those other things. So, and obviously for every street that's out there that somebody's concerned about, there's 100 other streets that are also in the same condition. So
right. So I mean, I've heard this a couple times from residents where it's, there's a project that's happening really close, like a sidewalk replacement. I'm only a few more, few block squares over. Can mine get replaced? Is that something that they can reach out to you guys about?
For sidewalk, I think we have a limited budget, right? $300,000 to $400,000 a year typically, and how that project works is we're working around the city in a manner that makes sense. Or just one section after the next section after the next section after the next section. So as far as we can get with the budget, we can't prioritize somebody's sidewalk that's outside of that area or in another part of the city, because that's going to cost more, right? To go send a contractor over there when their main focus is over here. So we try to do it as efficiently as possible.
I imagine it's easier to pour the blocks of concrete at this, one after another.
Yes,
everything's framed out.
Having the crews work in a smaller area versus around the whole city. So, but if people are really, really wanting to get their sidewalk repaired or replaced, we give them the option of they can pay for that to be done that year. So if you want to have your section done that bad, you can call us and we'll get it on the list.
And I imagine it's not just, we're not going to fix one block. It's going to be your entire stretch of your property potentially can get redone if needed.
It's got to be condemnable criteria, right? There's
trees popping up.
There's different standards. You know, like a tripping hazard over an inch of that, or a section that's settled, or parts that are broken apart. So,
Right, makes sense. I'm sure you're going to love this question of why does it seem like projects start and then sit and idle sometimes?
Yeah, really that boils down to perception and what you can see. There's a lot of different facets that go into all these projects. We have multiple crews working on various different items, and it's really a balance of, you know, a crew might not be working in a location that you can see. So a project could have 1, 2, 5 different areas, like our resurfacing project, where the contractor might be working in, you know, a different area from where you live and you don't see them, but they've already started work on your area. Well, they're actually progressing on a different area. We do give a little bit of flexibility within our contracts that make sure that work progresses to try and hit our project deadlines. But I think that's the biggest thing, is just understanding that there's so many different multiple crews, contractors, subcontractors, multiple different areas that are part of one large scale project, to where you may not always see a crew constantly right where your residence is, or right where you can visibly see on a daily basis. So it looks like something is sitting idle, but something else on a project is progressing. Or potentially there's a crew completing, you know, sanitary sewer lining, where they're just accessing a manhole that's down the street. Well, this work has to occur before the next phase of the project can start, but you can't see what, you know, that crew may or may not be doing. So there's a lot of different facets to remember that go into these projects. So just because we don't actually see a crew or a worker constantly, you can really get a handle on the work is occurring. And then another thing that plays into it is concrete cure time. And that's something that I think that a lot of people forget about, is that when we place concrete, you can't drive on it. You can't necessarily walk on it for a certain amount of time, but the traffic on it really slows down, you know, some work that can occur. If we pour an entire street the full width, well, that's 7 days before, you know, a contractor or anybody's going to be driving on it. So that work is going to sit idle until we hit the cure time, where the concrete has reached the proper strength where it can support construction vehicle equipment to continue work operations again.
And that all gets affected by weather and everything. So if you got a bunch of sunny days, it may cure a little bit quicker, a little better. And
temperature, humidity, everything plays into it. Time of the year. You know, concrete's going to cure much faster in August than it does here in March. So it's a lot of different moving environmental factors with these projects.
Do we have a lot of any projects, or do we ever ask contractors to kind of work late hours so it doesn't get impacting, but it doesn't impact traffic all much?
Yeah, we do have that. We pick and choose kind of when we deploy that methodology, depending on the location of the project or who might be impacted. We've done overnight work, especially with like sewer lining and items like that. We've done overnight work to make sure that we accelerate a schedule if we need to get an intersection reopened in, say, a very tight window. Contractors have worked late hours or even into overnight hours with lights, just to make sure that we're hitting those project deadlines. So we do open up some flexibility there. I mean, if you're working overnight, that's definitely still an impact.
Definitely,
yeah. People want to sleep. People, you know, you got to understand who's close by, who's going to be hearing that excavator running at 2 a.m. If you do give the contractor the option to do that.
Right, but if you ever need to close down a full segment of road, it might be easier if it's overnight at 1, 2 in the morning, like similar to what they do with highways. It's,
picking the battles for sure.
Yeah, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. it'll be closed, but it'll be fine.
All right, I know we've kind of gone over this before, but I think saying it one more time to kind of, as a good catch-all, refresh anyone in case they forgot. What is the best thing a resident can do to stay up to date on projects?
Signing up for the emails on the city's website, so you'll get project updates. That's the easiest way, direct from the project engineer.
And most of the time, it's Fridays is when they'll standard come out. But if there's ever midweek updates or anything, that those will come out of. Because of the weather, contractor won't be out there, or contractor might be out on Saturday, then a little bit earlier than expected, just in case you see someone working. It's like, oh, this is odd. Normally they work weekdays only, but
and it's especially important for the residents living on that street, so they know when the concrete curb is going down and the access is going to be restricted to driveways and things like that.
And we try and those big ticket items where we'll put out a midweek update if a a major paving operation or a major traffic shift or change is going to occur, just so we try and get that information out as quickly as we know about it, to give people at least the opportunity to plan ahead.
Yeah. And I know even the times it pops up where we're not in control of it. Like, for example, the road closures for the Canada National Railroad's coming through. They need to repair or replace something. We may not even find out until a few days before. But, I know we would do our best to try and say, hey, this intersection, this roadway, this crossing will be closed short-term, long-term. And honestly, 95% of the time, people are like, oh, I'm glad that's a really rough crossing.
It needed that. Yeah.
I can help.
And some of those we get notice of those just before they want to close it. So
the railroad crossing improvements done by the railroad are very tough. I mean, we don't find out about them until very late in the game, and then trying to get that notification out via social channels or any other way that we can. That's what we try and do, and try and reach as many people. We know we won't get to everybody, but we find out about that very late in the game, and there's not much that we can do about it to say
Sometimes
no.
I wonder if it's like an engineer goes over, it's like, that was a really rough crossing. We need to fix this. And
it becomes prioritized.
they just escalate that very quickly, And then so, while we're in the area, let's do a couple other ones. Or they, maybe they just survey it at that point. I don't know.
All right, we've come to the end of our questions. So to wrap it up, we've got some rapid fire questions. So this is kind of just a this or that. You don't have to defend it if you don't want to, but feel free if you think you need to.
If you feel like you'll be judged, then then feel free to defend. But
all right, so early bird or night owls?
Early.
Yep, sounds about right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee for sure.
Favorite season of the year?
Fall for sure.
Spring for me. So
What is your go-to comfort food?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd say like a pork roast. Pork roast with sauerkraut and that sort of thing, potatoes.
it sounds fantastic. Sure, it's not quite lunch yet, but it's
we're
getting there.
Mine first thing that came to mind was a buffalo wings.
Ooh, yep.
Favorite flavor of buffalo wing?
Just regular buffalo.
Oh, natural?
Mild, maybe a little hot, somewhere in their range.
Sounds great.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Dogs for sure.
Favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
Probably Christmas for me. Yeah.
Sweet or savory?
Savory.
Sweet.
Favorite sport to watch or play?
I guess golf.
I'd say to watch is, well, it depends if you count NASCAR as sport. Then I'd say NASCAR, but hockey for sure if we're going just to watch. I don't play hockey, but I wish I did.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. There's so many. I think more like a turtle sundae. How about that?
Okay.
It's not necessarily a flavor, but it can be, I guess.
It's a flavor of the day at Culver's every now and then.
Every now and then.
Right?
I'm just going to stick standard vanilla.
Oh, okay.
No toppings, no nothing, or
Well, toppings are okay.
All right.
Throw a little, some kind of candy piece in there.
Sure.
Probably spice it up a little bit.
like it?
Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert.
I'm definitely an introvert.
Favorite type of music?
Country.
Mine is hard rock.
Okay. Favorite colors?
Blue.
Highlighter lime green.
Later lime green. Wow.
So safety green?
Pretty much about that right
The high
now.
vis,
And then do you prefer chocolate or fruity candies?
I prefer chocolate.
Chocolate as well.
Chocolate. All right. And that concludes the rapid fire questions.
Well, thank you both for joining us on the podcast. Do you have anything you want to wrap up saying?
Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I
Fun.
appreciate the time. It's good to kind of get the word out about Public Works and some of the projects that we have going on and lined up for 25 and how our mentality kind of comes into a lot of those projects. And hopefully that'll be
Useful for some people.
yeah, people
Definitely.
get a handle of what we're up against on a daily basis.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
And that's a wrap for another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We hope you enjoyed diving into the heart of our city with us.
If you have a story to share or just want to say hello, reach out to us on social media at City of Waukesha on Facebook. We love hearing from our listeners.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you enjoyed the conversation. It really helps us spread the word.
As always, thanks for tuning in to Talkin' Waukesha, where every conversation springs to life.